Welcome to FCP Euro. Here we are in the Motorsport Garage. This is where we house our two Volkswagen GTI TCRs, as well as our C300 Endurance Racer right behind me. Now what's special about this space is this is actually part of our headquarters. So right to the right we have our retail center where enthusiasts come in every day to come pick up the parts they need to repair their European car. And what's even better is right behind us is our distribution center. This is where thousands of packages are picked, packed, and shipped every single day to enthusiasts like you around the world. Now, this year has been a little different for us. Due to COVID, we've stayed safe and we've stayed here and we haven't participated in events. That said, we have tried to participate from afar, either digitally or dipping our toes into e-racing and other things like that. Now, next year, we cannot wait to get back out into events and meet all of you in person. So if you just want to browse parts for your European car, or you want to learn more about our motorsports team, please head over to fcpeuro.com.
Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Yeah, this is it. Go! 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 Yeah, this is it. Go! Let's go! Yeah, this is it. Ready for it. Yeah, this is it. Go! Go! Yeah, this is it. Go! Let's go! This is it. It's now.
Round number 4 of the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship is a home game for the Americans in the field, a trip to the West Coast and to Monterey, California to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. 11 turns, 2¼ miles of twisting, rising pavement with the infamous corkscrew awaiting nearly 40 of the best in sim racing. Welcome back to GT World. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine from GT World Challenge America. This afternoon is our 4th of 5 rounds of the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. And Ryan, today is where we started off all of this a couple of months ago, back in the spring, Laguna Seca was our first round. This time, though, it's round 4, and it's going to be setting up our season finale in Imola after the new year. So we headed this 2.25-mile racetrack to do it again.
That's exactly right, Kyle. Very excited for the return to North American shores for the SRO Esports Championship. One of the fun things about this has been taking the series and its teams and drivers to tracks that obviously fall outside of the scope of the North American Championship. But this one is, like you said, a little bit closer to home. It certainly is one of the most iconic circuits in North American road racing and the perfect venue here for round 4.
Qualifying is underway for the GT4 cars, and we're going to take you down to the racetrack right now. And a big thanks to all the partners that have come on board with us this season. They'll be scrolling at the bottom of your screen on the left. We've also got some great giveaways to mention. Some gaming PCs with some Asus Tough Gaming 3080 GPUs and some high-performance AMD CPUs, so stay in tune on where to find all that information throughout this day. So 14 minutes remaining here in qualifying in Orcavillon in the number 56. Ryan, it has been no competition for Honor so far this season. Race wins left and right and leading the points.
Exactly. 3 wins in as many races. You could throw in a great performance in the endurance race that was an on-points race. That's one of the rarest things we've seen this season. A rare mistake for Honor there, just going a bit off track here in qualifying, but I don't think that was a flying lap. I think that was still the out lap, so I'm not sure it's going to cost her a whole lot. 3 wins, as we said, in 3 races. A big lead in the points, 90 points total to this point of the championship, leading by 19 over Caleb John Lavender there in the second spot. Cameron Sansano, Simon Fisher, and Juan Reynoso rounding out the top 5 in the GT4 points. But yeah, it's been all in Orcavillon all day ever since we kicked this thing off.
So Caleb John Lavender is here today as well in that 999 car. And you mentioned 19 points behind in Orcavillon. And Caleb John Lavender again in the Audi R8 GT4 car, working his way through qualifying. Lap times here are going to vary quite a bit between the GT3 and GT4 categories. This racetrack is relatively high downforce in parts. It's also got some slow sections that require a lot of mechanical grip. But lap time for Cavillon right now, a 1:29.517. Caleb John Lavender, a 1:30.678. So about a full second to gain to be up on that front row next to Mia Rose in the 956. Not a name that is super familiar, but here today in that 956, rolling through turn number 4 onto the back straightaway.
So Mia Rose also from the John Alesi Esports Academy. That's what an Orcavillon belongs to as well. And if my intel is correct, Mia has been doing some racing in the GT World Challenge Asia powered by AWS Championship of the Esports series over there, and evidently did a race at this track for that Asian Championships Esports series. That's the sister, of course, to GT World Challenge America, one of now 4 GT World Challenge series around the world. We had the exciting news here within the last couple of weeks that GT World Challenge Australia will be debuting this upcoming season, joining Europe, Asia, and America as the GT World Challenge Championships, all under the SRO umbrella. So exciting times for sure, and great to see the crossover between the esports versions of these championships, and not a surprise to see John Alesi Esports Academy well represented at the top, and Orcavillon and Mia Rose both highly regarded.
A full half second ahead of Takis Weeks in the number 626. However, Joseph Kostovich in the number 240 Aston Martin has jumped into 3rd place. And the Aston platform is one that we've seen be fairly competitive here in GT4. And looking at the top of the board, it's the twin Porsche Cayman 718s that top the timing and scoring. But then the Aston Martin 3rd, BMW M4 of Takis Weeks is in 4th. Caleb John Lavender in the Audi. Well represented. Our first Mercedes, however, is Cameron Sansano back in 7th. And while the Mercedes in GT4 have not been as plentiful as they have in GT3, I think they'll still be mighty competitive here. A lot of areas for this car to get some good torque off the corners and out-accelerate its competitors.
Exactly right. It's been very successful both in the esports realm but also in the real world as well. In Pirelli GT4 America competition, you see a lot of the Mercedes-AMG GT4s on the grid. We've talked a lot about what the GT3 version is capable of, and it's been on full display throughout our championship so far this year. We'll talk more about that when our GT3 competitors take to the track in just a moment. It's worth reminding folks, if you're joining us now, that the GT4 class here in the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship is open to sim racers who want to be a part of it. There's some qualifying that goes on in the build-up to the event, and you can put in times. If your times are good enough, you can join us and be represented on the grid, racing against real pros from the GT3 class and some sim racing pros as well, sprinkled between GT4 and GT3. So it's a really great opportunity to open the door to the SRO paddock, if you will, albeit virtually, to enthusiasts, whether they be real car enthusiasts or sim racing enthusiasts. I really like that element of what we're bringing to the table here in the second season.
Fan involvement in racing is probably more so than any other industry, which is really cool to see. And a little bit off track for Cincinnati at the exit at turn number 4. Let's talk about this racetrack here just a little bit. It's one of the, I would call it one of the American classics, right? It's been around for quite some time, built on a dry lake bed. As we'll go over in the track map a little bit later today, it's seen some changes in its several decade-long history, but everybody talks about the corkscrew here. That's the one big corner that really defines this place. Every other corner is your fairly standard affair in motorsports, but you get down to the corkscrew, Ryan, there's nothing quite like it anywhere else in the world. It's a several-story drop, and we're going to see Sensano drop through it here. Down 4 stories down to the bottom of the hill here, and that car is under compression. You're going to squeeze off that corner off into the very highly banked left-hander here of turn number 9. It's a really unique part of this racetrack.
No question about it. If you know anything about Laguna Seca, you know about the corkscrew. I can almost guarantee you that. Not a lot of passing happens there, but it can happen. We've seen it, of course, the famous pass, Alex Zanardi on Brian Herta in an IndyCar competition. We had a pretty classic prototype finish here a few years back as well with Renger van der Zande, who actually is part of the SRO stable of drivers for the Intercontinental GT Challenge for Acura, and Honda was competing at Kyalami a few weeks back, but I digress. Back to this track. This is absolutely the most famous piece of real estate on the circuit. It's renowned around the world, totally technical, so blind. You have switching back and forth, left to right, through the different compressions that you talked about as well. There's nothing like it. I think parts of Bathurst maybe remind you of it a little bit, but beyond that, it's hard to think of any kind of corner anywhere in the world that provides any preparation for what you have in store going over that crest at Laguna Seca for the first time.
GT3 cars on track for qualifying here for round number 4 of the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Michael Kondakcioglu leads the way, not only on the racetrack, but in the points. Here's a look at him, Ryan. 67 points to Lucas Muller with 63. That has closed up significantly. It's only a 4-point differential. That means this week and this season, ending here in Imola in a couple weeks, is going to be super important for Muller to close on Kondakcioglu, because I think, as he was at the beginning of the season, he will be the fastest car here today.
Well, Kondakcioglu has been the fastest if you just look at outright pace in every single one of our rounds, and has been towards the front in all of them as well, has probably been the most consistent in that regard, but has had some bad luck. There was a penalty, and going back to round number 3, that cost him dearly. He was able to recover and still score 11 points in that race, and that was crucial because it allowed him to hold a 4-point lead over Lucas Muller coming in to this race here. Troy Barman has been very fast, but sits quite a ways back after not scoring points at all in round number 3. In 4th in points, Philippe Simard, I think, has been the least fortunate of all of our contenders. Consistently a threat for the pole, consistently has run up front, but only one good finish to this point of the season. That was in the last round, where Philippe was able to score 26 points, which I think is a second-place result. Other than that, though, it's been really difficult for Philippe to this point. Just 10 points in the first round, 9 in the second. It was the pole sitter in at least one of those 2 races. So definitely looking to get a breakthrough result here, a win, and some bad luck for those that he's chasing. And I think Philippe is one you're going to have to keep an eye on in that final round, but he needs to keep himself in contention here at Laguna Seca. He needs to have a great race, maybe a little bit of good luck on his hands. And if that's the case, if he can leave here anywhere close to our leaders, I would not put it past Philippe Simard to be our champion when things wrap up in Imola, but he does need some luck, which he has not had to this point of the year.
He definitely has some pace. Cody Blanton does as well. He's currently sitting on top of the board. He is in one of those Mercedes-AMG GT3s, and have a look at the top. 3 of the top 5 drivers in those Mercedes. Carl Whitmer in that number 22 Acura NSX GT3. We're going to get to ride on board with him a little bit later before the race begins to show you what a lap here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca looks like. He's currently 5th, and Carl Whitmer has been finding some pace, and I think a lot of it has to be attributed to the engineering that's going on behind the scenes there's a lot of manufacturer involvement, at least from my understanding, of trying to figure out how to science these cars out, not only in the real world, but also in the simulator. And I think Carl has been leaning on some expertise here to help build the setups for these cars, and it's been awful good lately for Carl Whitmer.
That's really interesting to learn, and it would not come as a surprise, especially from a group like Honda or Acura, depending on how you view the NSX. Globally, it is a Honda. In the States, it's an NSX, and we're racing in the States, so we'll call it an Acura NSX here this time around. But Carl, part of the HPD GT3 Driver Academy, and has been getting some real-world laps in this car, told me that this is all pretty new to him, the sim racing stuff. He took some time when the pandemic really first started to rear its ugly head and everyone was stuck inside. He had fortunately just bought a sim rig and decided this is the time to get in on it. We saw him as part of GT Rivals earlier in the season as well. Very fast, part of a Canadian family that is just totally linked to motorsports. It goes back generations at this point, and not a surprise to see him up towards the front, and good to hear that he can rely a little bit on some of the resources perhaps at his disposal given his tie-ins with Honda, Acura, and Honda Performance Development.
Whitmer down to 9th now. Michael Kondakjioglu still has not laid down a time that I would consider to be where that car should run. He's on a flyer right now. We'll see if he can beat Philippe Simard, who's laid down a 1:21.1. That's the fastest lap time I've seen this afternoon. A reminder that there are giveaways thanks to Asus and Tough Gaming. 2 sim rigs with Fanatec sim racing gear with custom Asus Tough Gaming 3080 GPUs and AMD CPUs. You can find that information on how to enter to win in the GT World Challenge America social networks, be that Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or here in the YouTube chat. So make sure that you enter to win. I want one of those fancy 3080s. I think I got one coming too. So make sure that you check those things out. Kondakjioglu improves to 7th this time. He's going to pull off. Surprised at his pace here. Lucas Muller, Lucas with a C, has jumped up to 2nd place. Troy Barman, though, Ryan, this is a car that we should probably keep an eye on. Sits 4th in the 191.
Not a big surprise. Troy has been up towards the pointing end more often than not in our competitions to this point. I'm really interested, though, that Simard has the pole and by a massive margin. A half a second in GT3 racing is huge. It looks like Barman's given up on this lap and wisely moving to the side to let some of the cars that are still on their flyers come through. But look at Philippe Simard hanging the back end of that Ferrari out just a little bit, coming down through the corkscrew, and now the final sequence of corners here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. We'll see if he can improve even further. That 121.171, that's going to be a tough time to match based on what we've seen so far.
Cross the line this time. We'll see if this is not going to be a flying lap. This one will be, though. This will be his 5th lap that he's run. We'll stay on board here for a moment. Brake at the 3 board. Down on the brakes. Kind of aim for that first apex. Sort of a double apex corner of the Andretti hairpin down here. Big rotation out of the rear end. Throttles back up off on the side. I believe that's Dirk Grunfeld in the Corteco car that has pulled off the circuit. But Simard is finding a lot of pace here. This car is very well balanced. It's hanging out the rear end a little bit. Maybe it's too loose to find speed in the long run here, Ryan. You might burn off those rear tires a little bit, but it's going to be very fast in a qualifying setting.
That's a great point, and maybe that is something to keep an eye on in the race. This track in real life is known for being high on tire degradation. The surface of this track, for whatever reason, chews through tires, so that might be something to keep an eye on. But it's also worth noting that there's a good chance that Philippe has a qualifying setup on here that might be a little bit down on downforce. You can handle that for a few laps, keeping the car pointed the right way and not needing to worry about tire wear. And I suspect he's got a little bit something different in store for the race. Look at the name that's just jumped up to 2nd, by the way. Brian Heitkotter up into the 2nd spot, our GT Rivals champion from back in the spring, and that Nissan, a late arrival, but as he tends to do, pops that car up towards the front. Now dropped down to 3rd, and Nelson Mason driving a Porsche this time. That's a change. We've typically seen him in Audi machinery as of late, but making the switch here for this competition. Great to see one of our real-world drivers along with Brian Heitkotter in the field. Nelson Mason's been a quick study with this sim racing stuff, but I put the curse on him there. The back end steps around and he noses into the tire barrier.
And Nelson Mason has had a lot of pace in the past and brings that Porsche up to second place. Brian Heitkotter, you mentioned a late entry. He got into a habit of doing this last season. It had always worked out, but this time around he's had, I wouldn't call them struggles. I think it's just the competition has been so much more intense this season. But here he is in third place in qualifying. I don't think we've seen the last of him yet. I don't know if he's going to get back to the start-finish line in time to run another lap. We have 26 seconds left here in qualifying. You get to finish your lap if you start one, but I think he's a little far away from the start line to start another new lap here.
I think you're right, and he might just be testing something out to try before the race, just one last opportunity here, because I think he had to know, leaving the pits, he wasn't going to be able to get back around to start another lap. Nevertheless, this is a guy who absolutely dominated most of the time in GT Rivals and was fast here at Laguna Seca as well, and one who has some real-world racing experience here at this racetrack, which can always help in your efforts in sim racing too. So one to keep an eye on. Starting in third, Kondachi down there in seventh has taken the checkered flag. So a bit of a surprise. Our points leader starting further down than we're used to seeing, but still very much there in contention. I think the most interesting thing, though, to this point, Kyle, is the fact that Simard has a full 0.4 of a second in store over Nelson Mason. That is a big, big gap in GT3 racing. Now, it's just qualifying, and he might have to dial it back some for the race like we were talking about earlier, but even still, that sends a message to the rest of the field that that Ferrari is awfully fast.
It definitely does. So Philippe Simard up 4.5 tenths from Nelson Mason in a Porsche 991 GT3R. Then Heitkotter, Lucas Muller, Nick McMillan, the rest of your top five. Then Barman Kondachiolu, the points leader. Dirk Grunfeld, Lucas Muller, and Carl Whitmer rounding out the rest of your top 10. Looking down the order into the GT4 category here, Ryan. Not really a lot has changed here. Anor Cavillon still pole sitter, but it's a teammate alongside her for the green flag here in just a few moments. But we've got 60 minutes of multi-class sports car racing about to happen here for the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. We'll be back in a moment for the green flag.
Welcome to FCP Euro. Here we are in the Motorsport Garage. This is where we house our two Volkswagen GTI TCRs, as well as our C300 Endurance Racer right behind me. Now, what's special about this space is this is actually part of our headquarters. So right to the right, we have our retail center where enthusiasts come in every day to come pick up the parts they need to repair their European car. And what's even better is right behind us is our distribution center. This is where thousands of packages are picked, packed, and shipped every single day to enthusiasts like you around the world. Now, this year has been a little different for us. Due to COVID, we've stayed safe and we've stayed here and we haven't participated in events. That said, we have tried to participate from afar, either digitally or dipping our toes into e-racing and other things like that. Now, next year, we cannot wait to get back out into events and meet all of you in person. So if you just want to browse parts for your European car, or you want to learn more about our motorsports team, please head over to fcpeuro.com.
WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca on the west coast of the U.S. is one of the classic American road courses, and it's the site of the fourth round of the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Points battles are in full swing with only a single round remaining after the sun sets in California, but we'll have one more opportunity to mix things up before heading off to Imola in January. Welcome back to GT World. My name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine for our fourth round of the season. Ryan, Laguna Seca, as we mentioned in the pre-race, is a super fun racetrack with 11 corners, 2.25 miles, and it's a really fun racetrack to drive. It's another great racetrack to race on as well. Let's have a look here at the track map. It all starts back in the mid-1900s. They built this place, and up until 1988, this was the layout. It was a 9-corner track, kind of a ring road around the outside, super high speeds. What is currently turn number 3, or what was turn number 3, essentially turned into turn number 5 on the newer layout, and again, they changed it in 1988, and there is that change. Added an infield section and a couple more corners to make it 11, and this has become an American classic, Ryan.
It has. It still has that same nature of a classic mid-century racetrack. So many of those built in that time frame just made such great use of the natural topography, and Laguna Seca is no different. Yes, there is that change that you mentioned in 1988, although for those of us our age, I was born in 1988, I don't know the track any different. This is Laguna Seca as far as I'm concerned. A lot of those changes were put into place due to some safety issues, the high speeds that you mentioned as the cars just kept getting faster and faster. But there is nothing to take away from this layout. It is a classic for good reason. The Andretti hairpin to kick things off. then the couple of 90-degree right-handers leading into the uphill run that takes you ultimately to the corkscrew, then plunging back down the hill again. It's fast, it's sweeping, blind corners, technical corners, everything you could ask for in a racetrack. Great to drive, great to spectate, great to broadcast. There's just not a whole lot to complain about when you're heading out to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. And typically the weather is pretty perfect as well, and it seems like that's the case in-game here for us today.
It sure is. We're now going to jump over to the Honda Performance Development track preview of WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca with Carl Whitmer.
Hi, I'm Carl Whitmer, driver in the HPD GT3 Academy, and here's the Honda Performance Development track preview in the number 22 Acura NSX GT3 Evo. As we start, we're going to be thundering over turn 1. It's flat. Going downhill into turn 2 is going to be crucial. We're looking for that 3 sign. Brake hard. We're looking for patience. Rolling through turn 2, maximize TC intervention, full gas, run up to turn 3. It's going to be a tricky corner. It's a late entry, but you got to be super patient. Don't hit the inside bollard. Straddle the rumble strip all the way to turn 4. Flick of the steering wheel. Get on the gas early and long run down to turn 5. This is crucial. You can look at your tire wear, your brake wear. Turn 5 brake zone. Uphill. Use the compression. Late turn in. Get on the gas early as possible. Maximize corner exit. Straddle the desert sand. Going up to turn 6. Full commitment blind entry. You really want to commit to the inside and really use the track as much as you can. Going up to the infamous corkscrew. Hard brake over the crest. Try and be light in the brake pedal. Turn in, blind entrance. Full gas down the roller coaster into turn 9. Use all the aerodynamics. It's all about maximizing rolling speed. Use all the rumble strips. Head into turn 10. Get inside, full gas. Use the exit. Run up to the 90-degree flat left. Crucial on turn in and corner exit. Run up to turn 1 again, and that's a lap of Laguna Seca. Thanks for watching the Honda Performance Development track preview in the number 22 Acura NSX GT3 Evo.
Back live for the 4th round of the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Just about to get rolling for our 1 formation lap before we turn this 40-car field loose for 60 minutes of racing here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. Philippe Samard on pole alongside Nelson Mason in a Porsche. And the topic of discussion, Ryan, is the Mercedes. There are a Porsche, a Ferrari, and a Nissan ahead of most of the Mercedes field, and the strength of the Mercedes AMGs seems to be a little bit less this week than it was in weeks past. And we know how even these cars are here in Assetto Corsa Competizione with the balance of performance. But today, I think Samard, Mason, and Heitkotter have all showed up to play in cars other than the Mercedes.
Yeah, it's one of those things that even with the balance of performance, certain tracks are going to favor certain cars. And thinking back on the Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli rounds that were held here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca over the years, Audi always seemed to do quite well. The mid-engined Acura had a pole actually in qualifying for one of those races. And so maybe, yes, the Mercedes would still show well in those races, but it shouldn't come as a complete surprise that we look and we see some success from some of the other manufacturers. This is a much different track than those that we have seen so far. The American tracks just have a slightly different character to them, a lot less runoff for one thing, and some of the other aspects of them, certainly the surface is a lot different as well when you think about the tire degradation and things of that nature. Not sure what exactly it is that is causing the Mercedes to struggle relative to what we've seen in the past. They're still well represented up at the front, but definitely I think what we've seen for qualifying, I do expect that to carry over. The Ferrari should be strong around this track, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the other marques that have qualified well, the Porsche and the Nissan specifically, continue to show well over the course of a 1-hour race. But I do think whichever brand takes care of its Pirelli tires the best is going to be in a strong position. As I've talked about a couple of times, this track is known for having high tire degradation. That's modeled in the game as well. And so all of these guys are thinking about that as they get ready to take the green. How fast can I go without putting too much strain on the tires that will ultimately cost me at the end of the race?
The field running around their formation lap, getting the tires and brakes up to temperature. The run down to the Andretti hairpin is a tight one. The track kind of widens on entry. You're over a blind crest on that front straightaway underneath the bridge, and then you head down into that first corner. It's a double apex turn. You can hang tough on the outside if you can roll enough speed, but you got to have tire temp to be able to do that. And then it's a couple right-handers, and I think that's why being on driver's right heading into the Andretti hairpin is not such a bad thing, Ryan, because if you can stay alongside, you're probably going to walk out of that battle with the lead of whoever you're fighting with, just because there's two double right-handers right after that you can carry a lot of speed. Then it switches over to turn 5, the left-hander, the run up to a very single file turn number 6. Then to that famous corkscrew, which is always a challenge on the opening lap. As we're heading to it right now, you can see it approaching the several-story drop. The track falls away, the car gets light, and then it slams down onto the bump stops. The suspension compresses. You're going to scrape all the fancy carbon fiber bodywork on these cars. And then you got to carry all the downforce through turns 9 and 10 into a very tight turn number 11 to do it all over again. 60 minutes worth of racing today. The last time we were here in GT Rivals in the spring, we had a huge pileup at the exit at turn number 3, so staying neat and tidy is going to be super important.
Well, that's been the case in a couple of our races so far. The Nürburgring had its issues at the start. Bathurst certainly did. There have been other examples of it as well. Hopefully the lessons have been learned, and we're about ready to turn this field loose. Great looking field, a lot of talent in the field as well, and we got a great hour of racing in store for us when we get the green flag here momentarily. 42
drivers lined up to go racing in the 4th round of the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. We'll conclude it after the new year in Imola in Italy, but now it's a trip home for the Americans. West Coast swing at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, and now the run up to the start-finish line. 20 rows strong. Ferrari versus Porsche on the front row. It's a classic American road course with some spectacular race cars. Green flag flies, and we're racing in the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. 3 wide, Samard in the middle. Here comes Heitkotter down the inside for the race lead. He's got it, but a great dive on the outside for Mason. He's going to run wide, though, and Heitkotter takes the lead to the first corner.
Wow, that was a big move from Heitkotter. He timed that start to perfection. A little door-to-door contact, but that looked clean to me. Able to get out in front. Simard able to recover, and that was big for him. He's qualified on pole before, but hasn't always had the cleanest of getaways. Yes, he lost the lead, but he's still in a position where he can go out there and try and contend for a win. And perhaps most crucially, the car in front is not a championship rival. So that definitely does play into the calculus here over the final 59 minutes.
So far, so good. Most of the field's made it through the first couple corners without an incident. Heitkotter leads the way. Behind, I see, is that Nick McMillan all over the back of Nelson Mason's Porsche. Mason almost had the race lead heading into the Andretti hairpin, just carried too much speed and drove in too hot. Barman behind him in a Mercedes, as well as Luke Smuller in the 44, and it's 3 of those AMGs running nose to tail, 4th through 6th. As we head down the hill towards turn 10, almost a lap complete already. They tick by fast here at Laguna Seca.
But crucially, Kyle, one of those Mercedes is not Cadacciolo. He qualified 7th. I do not see him on the scoring pylon. You can see the yellows up at the top, and we do have problems back in the pack. Cadacciolo was right there amongst them, able to get through it. That's amongst the GT4 traffic, so something definitely went awry for Cadacciolo at the start, and he's on the back foot. He's at the back of the GT3 field.
And Honor Cavillon, notably, looks to be at the tail of the GT4 field, so some trouble for Honor back in the 56 car behind the entire GT4 field. This is going to be a fun battle to watch. Honor have to drive through everybody. A couple drivers hit pit lane. Drake Pergun is one of them. But a few incidents throughout the field, but notably involving some of our heavy hitters, especially in the GT4 category.
Yeah, both of our points leaders have problems. This is the first time we've seen Cavillon on the back foot, and already under pressure there with the Nissan behind. That's Chris Forsberg, who has the same livery as Brian Heitkotter, I believe. Those cars look very similar. They're racing out of the Forsberg Racing stable. And Nora not giving him a lot of room up there on the inside. She's driving through the red mist right now, wanting to try and recover after that difficult start. The good news for the Jean Alesi Esports Academy is that her teammate Mia Rose right now is up in the top spot in class. So whatever happened with our leader and pole sitter in GT4 did not affect the outside pole sitter.
Well, some GT3 cars kind of work their way through traffic. That's Jason Alexandridis in the 222 car, back in 28th overall. We're going to move back forward into GT3. Heitkotter comes across the line, will complete I believe, our third lap, but Philippe Simard is running on pace, and last time by was a couple hundredths of a second quicker. So while they shuffled amongst the front three, I'm not convinced that Highcutter's actually faster than Simard. Looks like that Ferrari's closing back up.
Yes, it does look that way, and that's not a big surprise. Again, we saw the huge pace gap in qualifying, 0.4 of a second from the pole sitter to second place Nelson Mason. But one thing I will give Brian Highcutter, we saw this time and time again in GT Rivals. He was not always the fastest, but he knew how to position that car to make it nigh on impossible to get by. We're going to see some of those defending skills on display. He rarely makes a major mistake, and Simard, I think, is going to have to try and force one of those and take advantage when it happens. One thing about this track, it is not known in these high downforce cars to be a place that is easy to overtake, but one thing that is in his advantage that was not in play back in GT Rivals is the multi-class nature of this competition here, and perhaps the GT4 field might open up an opportunity if Simard can get close enough to our race leader, Brian Highcutter.
We'll keep an eye on the front runners, checking back a little bit deeper in the field here. Sally McNulty with a mirror full of Michael Herzen in the FCP Euro Mercedes. He's going to go the long way around of Sally. McNulty, again, joining TC America this year in one of the Honda Civic SI TCA cars. Very nice-looking vehicle that she's got running in the 2021 season. Running right now 17th place in class with Herzen and Matthew Marlowe in behind in that Lamborghini. Marlowe going to juke to the left, but couldn't build a run strong enough to get to the inside of the 71 of Herzen and the FCP Euro Mercedes. On the brakes, late for Marlowe, sees the door open. McNulty overdrives just a little bit. Herzen slams on the binders. Now Marlowe up the inside, a little bit of a touch there, and a drag race over to turn 3.
That's a great look at that turn 3 Andretti hairpin that you talked about earlier. Being on the outside's not always the worst thing, is it? Because you've got a couple of right-handers to follow if you can hang there on the outside through the hairpin. McNulty doing a nice job staying strong. She's got a lot of time attack experience before she got into door-to-door racing. Graduated to TC America back in 2019 and finished 11th in the TCA class in a Honda Civic. And you can see that Honda tie-in continuing even here in the sim racing world.
Running the Acura NSX GT3 right now in that 17th place position. Dirk Grunfeld running the Corteco car. Corteco, the presenting sponsor for the WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca event here. And Dirk running in 9th in class right now. Has a bit of a gap back to Sam Cairns in the 92. Carl Whitmer is back there in 11th as well. But Grunfeld last season was extraordinarily competitive. This season he's been a solid top 10 contender. And he's only a couple seconds off Cody Blanton ahead of him, so I wouldn't be surprised to see this Corteco car running up inside the top 5 by the end of this race.
Yeah, Dirk's been very strong, had a pretty good run in the last race at Monza. Just hasn't had a ton of great results to show for some pretty good pace throughout the course of the season. Did not score points in the first round, only 2 points in the second, so he has mired back at 18th in points, and will need to do quite a bit of work here to get a top 5 type finish to really emerge in a position where he can get the kind of points result that he's looking for. Up front, it's Brian Highcutter, though still not much has changed. These three have been running in formation, it would seem, for basically the entire race to this point. And what's interesting to me is that Nelson Mason might have even more pace than our pole sitter Simard. He appears to be closing in on Simard, where Simard might be dropping off ever so slightly off the back of that Nissan up ahead.
I see a battle going on behind them as well. Nick McMillan dealing with Troy Barman behind him. Barman's going to see the door open up to the inside of turn 11, going to drive down the inside, thinks better of it, backs out. Now Lucas Muller closes up in the 44 car. Great scrap for position. That would be 4th place that they're contesting now. I see Cody Blanton in the background in the blue Mercedes. But I see this 4th position being a little bit more volatile than the one up ahead of him.
And Troy Barman, we talked about him a little bit earlier, currently running there in the 5th spot, but really heavily involved in the sim racing world. And while he's tried a bunch of different sims, he told us that this particular sim, Assetto Corsa Competizione, is the one that really clicked for him. It's the one he's focused a lot of his attention on. He's been doing this for some time, going back to some of the earlier sims that existed with sports car racing, but has found a home here with ACC and has been proving to be a very quick driver week in and week out in the Mercedes-AMG GT3 package. Runs a little bit wide there, and that might provide an opportunity for one of our Lucas Mullers. We do have 2 in the field. One spelled Lucas with a C, one with a K. And one of our two Lucas Mullers picked up a win the last time out at Monza.
Three-way battle for the lead through GT4 traffic. Heitkotter leads the pack through. Philippe Samard was able to close right up to the tailpipes. Nelson Mason followed through, but 1, 2, 3 drive-through penalty for Lucas with a K in 6th place right now. Maybe not sure what that's for. That could be for the contact that we saw with the Kondashiolu machine earlier in the race. We didn't see how he got turned around, but we believe that the 96 got turned around, and that's what interfered with the GT4 field. So that could be where those puzzle pieces fit together. Heitkotter, though, still leads the way with 51 minutes remaining. Philippe Samard, Nelson Mason, Nick McMillan, the rest of your top 4. Barman hanging on in 5th, and Lucas is going to hit pit lane in that 44 car.
Yeah, Lucas serving that penalty now. This has points implications. We'll get to that as we watch this battle for the lead as it
he's around
GT traffic, and that might have been contact.
Nelson Mason and Samard both get turned, and maybe a touch there from the GT4 car pulls right across the field into traffic, and they'll get back rolling but lose a whole bunch of spots, and drama for the 2nd and 3rd place cars right back into traffic. More trouble now. Carl Whitmer, Sam Cairns. No, Cairns is through. No, that was Cairns in the Bentley, so he's actually stopped on the racetrack. Carl Whitmer picks up some damage in that, and it's chaos in turn 3.
Well, unfortunately, I have to say that he's not great awareness with the rejoin. We see that too often in sim racing. That's something that doesn't happen too often in the real world because there are major consequences for it. Unfortunately, there are consequences here, just not ones that affect life and limb, thankfully, because that really was some dangerous stuff. I hate to see that. It's a real shame. I certainly understand the impetus to try and get back on track as quickly as possible, because of the frustration, I'm sure, losing out on a chance to race for the win most likely, given what happened just a few moments before. But that is going to impact a lot of others' races, and I imagine that's going to draw the attention of the stewards here. Quickly, though, I did want to go back to that drive-through penalty for Lucas Muller, Lucas with a K. He actually was 2nd in points coming into this round, despite the fact that he is not the Lucas Muller with a race win. That was Lucas with a C the last time. He was kind of mired back 9th in points, only 31 points to his name from 3 rounds of the championship. But certainly that's going to hurt Lucas Muller. Interesting, though, that he's got the points leader, Kondashiolu, behind him right here. Boy, that was close. And so that's effectively a battle for the points lead happening right there in front of us.
Now Muller in the 44, Kondashiolu in the number 96, fighting back from that early spin. Keeping an eye on the GT4 fight, again with Anor Cavillon, the points leader there, getting shuffled. Anor's still got a lot of work to do, especially to catch the race leader in Mia Rose in 25th and overall, leading the GT4 field. Goes side by side into turn 5. That's going to be a touch there. Muller forces his way through the 92 car. Sam Cairns, and off the racetrack he goes.
That was a strange incident, to say the least, and I have to say, Sam has kind of been used up here in the last couple of laps. There was the issue with the rejoin just a little while ago, and that was a pretty aggressive move from Muller there. He was pretty close to being alongside. I'm not sure if it merits a penalty, but for Cairns, there's been a lot of contact that has not been of his making, I think it's safe to say.
Up in front, look at this traffic jam Heitkotter's got to work through. This was not something he had to deal with last season when we ran WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. Double file in front of him, nowhere to go. Going to have to be patient here, but Nick McMillan is not too far behind him. You see him in that red car, and it's going to slot between those GT4 cars, now juke to the right for turn 4.
This is multi-class racing at its best. It's always fraught, it's always tense, and that's why we love it. Maybe not all the drivers love it all the time, but it does create opportunities that might not be there otherwise. A little bit of information, by the way, coming to us from the stewards. That penalty for Lucas Muller comes due to contact with Kondashiolu back on the opening lap. So we were kind of speculating that maybe those two did get together. The confirmation has come in. That was the case. And that adds a little extra wrinkle of drama to our championship fight. Might have a little bit of a rivalry brewing here with 1.5 more or less races to go.
I think that's a possibility. Nick McMillan has his hands full, blue flags waving at all the corner stations. Again, those are not compulsory. They're just informative flags. If you see a blue flag, it means there is a faster car approaching. The drivers are not required to take any specific action. As you see, lots of cars taking different actions at the exit turn 11. This is a huge traffic jam, 3 wide with GT4 car on the left, GT3 car on the right. McMillan goes through both of them, but is losing time to Brian Heitkotter, 3 seconds out front. And Barman gets stuck in behind that 6 GT3 now moves on through.
Yes, that's exactly right, and you took the words out of my mouth. We're watching this battle, and as entertaining as it is, the thought going on between the ears of these drivers has to be, well, this is only holding us up. Heitkotter out in front is able to pull away a little bit, nearly 3 seconds now, the gap between first and second. Frankly, it's not as big as I thought it could have been. I thought Heitkotter, after that contact a little bit ago, might have a chance to really make good his escape, but really, it's been a measured run from Brian so far, and that's fitted. That's what we come to expect from him. And so maybe I shouldn't have been surprised after all, but this is great stuff here as Barman continues to heap the pressure on McMillan, who does appear to be a little bit weaker at this point. I think Barman's going to have a chance. He just has to take advantage of it when it opens up, and this could begin right here.
That looks to be Chris Forsberg. I thought that was Heitkotter that had maybe a slowdown penalty of some sort, but Barman and McMillan working their way through traffic, and I believe, is that Cavillon? No, that's actually the leader in GT4, Mia Rose, that they're driving through now. So you could count the GT3 field as worked their way through the GT4 field at least once. And it's going to happen a whole lot more times. We're less than 15 minutes into the race. That means we're going to pass those GT4 cars another 3 times perhaps by the end of this thing. So you better get used to getting by traffic.
Yeah, it will get a little bit easier as the race goes along and attrition sets in and cars drop out of the race. But even still, I think we're going to be pretty busy from start to finish here. That traffic did play into Brian Heitkotter's hands. We were talking about the lead being under 3 seconds. Well, it's up over 4 seconds now.
Here's Jonathan Lee in the Liqui Porsche down the front straightaway. Here comes Chris Bruno in the 909 on the outside. Michael Condacciolu on the inside. Lamborghini, Porsche, and Mercedes. All great racing manufacturers represented here in Assetto Corsa Competizione, and scrapping for an 11th place position a little ways back behind Philippe Samard.
And no sign of our second Lucas Muller, who was there running with them. Remember, after that penalty, he and Condacciolu came out right by one another, and I'm not sure what has happened there, but again, championship implications. That is not what Muller needed to try and stay in touch with Condacciolu, although Condacciolu really not in a position to take full advantage. Here is Muller on the pit lane, so something has gone awry for the Haupt Racing team driver. His teammate still out there turning laps, looking fairly strong, but this was the better placed of the 2 Haupt cars in the championship.
A little bit wide there at the pit exit, very constricting exit road that you have to keep the car on the course for. Checking in on the GT4 field, I know there was a lot of confusion around the race start. Mia Rose, the teammate to Honor Cavillon, is leading right now by about 1.2 seconds over Takis Weeks in the M4 GT4, then Joseph Kostovic a little bit behind that. Honor Cavillon down in 8th place at the moment in class, but for Honor, I'm not sure that there's a huge concern. I mean, obviously you want to keep as much of a point lead as you can. With a season like Cavillon has had, I'm not sure that this is a panic moment. I think you just try to get through it, finish in the top 5, or even if you can get back to a podium. The goal is long-term, not individual races, and this wouldn't be a great result for Cavillon, but it's not going to be a season ender by any stretch.
Well, the good news is it doesn't appear that Caleb John Lavender is having any better of a day. I don't see Lavender's name on the timing screen. Correct me if you see him somewhere, but that would be second in points. Really the only car or only driver that had a shot at Cavillon in the championship. So if you're talking about trying to minimize the impact of a bad day, that certainly goes a long way to helping in that particular goal.
Yeah, no sign of Caleb John Lavender. I don't know where Caleb has gone, not recorded in the pits either, so trouble perhaps for him as well. But we'll check back in on the GT4 field a little bit later today and get an update on that. Meanwhile, back out front, Brian Heitkotter's lead has now sort of skyrocketed to 5 seconds, and Barman and McMillan fighting amongst themselves. Do you think they've already given up on the chance of running down Heitkotter and are just battling for second? As, ooh, trouble, Philippe Samard with a drive-through, and that would be for the rejoin, would be my guess. Yeah,
I think that's got to be right, unless something else happened that we didn't see, but that checks out to me. As we saw it in real time, I thought there was something that could have been done a little bit better, let's put it that way, in that rejoin, being a bit more aware of the cars coming through. That certainly impacted others, Cairns in particular. So definitely costly for our pole sitter. Unfortunately, that's the way the season has gone for Philippe. He's been so fast, hasn't really led that many laps though, for various reasons. The starts just haven't quite been there. And I'd say as well that that just some of the racing luck hasn't fallen Philippe's way, and as a consequence, I think we can pretty much write off his championship hopes here after what we've seen so far in this race.
Roy Barman had a spin down in the Andretti hairpin and drops to 7th now, so that battle for second might have gotten a little bit too frisky. That's going to bring Lucas Muller, Lucas with a C, into 3rd place. Cody Blanton right behind in the number 9. There he is in that Mercedes-AMG GT3, a lap car between them. But a lot of shuffling at the top of the order, a lot of trouble today for our front runners, which I think is a little bit surprising. I thought we would have a pretty clean race up front and the carnage would be rearward, but it's been more up at the front today in both categories than I would have expected. Moving back to Jonathan Lee in this number 7. He had let by Josh Staffen in the 23. Staffen is back this week in the Lexus.
Cool to see the Lexus in the field once again. Josh Staffen having a nice run to 9th at this point. Josh has been a big part of everything that we've done, working, of course, with Champion Motorsports, and great to see him out on the track as well.
So some more information on Philippe Simard. The stewards have given us the full synopsis of this incident. We didn't get a great look at it. We saw it from the side. Entering turn 3, Simard was on the outside and turned down into the 335 car, which, looking on a timing and scoring, is Verena May in the 335 GT4 car. So the 42 turned in on May and spun them both out. The 35 car caught as collateral as the 335 rolled back onto the racetrack, and then Simard obviously rejoined off pace into the line of the 92, and the 22 receiving incidental contact. So 5 or 6 car incident, all things said and done. But Simard, again, turning in on some GT4 traffic. That's always a discussion, Ryan, is you think you're going to be clear of that car, you turn down to the apex, and they're still there. And if you're not going to leave space, you're going to have a bad time. So it's just being conscious of the momentum that you're carrying and being sure that you're clear before you turn to the apex.
That's it, exactly. And it's difficult in both circumstances. Being the faster class car, it's so frustrating sometimes to catch the traffic at a poor part of the racetrack where you can't easily make a pass. But on the flip side, if you're the car being passed, you can do a lot to make it easier, but you can't just disappear. And I think that's what we saw right there. The two just didn't quite know where each other was on the racetrack, and as a consequence we had the contact, which resulted in the penalty, and a whole lot more had transpired after that as well. So it definitely had a major impact on it, but that's multi-class racing, and that's going to play a big part, I think, the multi-class nature of this championship in how the season plays out and what the ultimate result is. I think there's a number of instances this season we can look back on and say, yes, it was multi-class racing that had a major impact on the ultimate outcome of the race and therefore the championship.
Michael Herzen in the number 71 FCP Euro Mercedes, running right behind Philippe Simard right now. For Herzen and Vincent, I think consistency was an issue earlier in the season for that FCP Euro team, but they've gotten it sorted out this week. The pace might not be there, but they've got those cars running in the right direction with minimal damage, which is a really good change for that team. And right now, Herzen, a little bit, as I say that, commentator curse, runs a little wide in turn 5, but pulls it back on course without incident.
Well, glad to know I'm not the only one guilty of hexing our competitors from time to time. Sorry about that, Michael. We certainly didn't mean anything ill by it, but to your point, I do think it's been interesting watching both Michael and Nate from FCP Euro just get more and more comfortable with the esports side of the sport that they've been a part of for so long. It's something that's new to both of them, but they've really grasped it with 2 hands, and it's fun seeing them take advantage of it and then get faster and more consistent, to your point, as the season has gone along. And I just can't wait to see them back out on track in SRO America competition next year. It sounds like they've got an exciting project that they're working on that they haven't been able to announce just yet, but when they do, I have every reason to believe it's one that's going to be very exciting and a big step for the FCP Euro program.
Absolutely. Checking back in on the Corteco BMW M6 GT3, that's Dirk Grunfeld. Mentioned earlier that I thought this would be a top 5 car. Well, look where he is, running in 5th right now. And it's just by being consistent with the troubles some other drivers have had around him. He's been able to advance his position inside the top 5. And Lucas Muller, Cody Blanton are about to scrap for 3rd place. So this battle might bring Dirk even closer to getting a podium as well. You see him in the background, in the backdrop there.
Yeah, and he can see his quarry up ahead, and that is like waving that red flag in front of an angry bull, isn't it? When you have your competition that you're trying to chase just up the road ahead of you, you can see yourself closing in, and adds to that motivation just that little bit. And yeah, I think we'll have Dirk up in this fight before it's all said and done. these two in equal machinery, the two Mercedes-AMG GT3s racing very close together, nose to tail, working through some GT4 traffic. I think right there, that was advantage Lucas. That traffic not in an advantageous position there for Blanton, but he's able to clear it, and now the pursuit begins again.
And some more traffic up the road, another M4 GT4 machine in turn 5. They'll run a little bit wide, see the tires just aching for grip on the outside of that corner. Turn 5 is a tricky one, Ryan. You've got to stay down there close to the apex. There's a big anti-cut curve that you don't want to hit, but if you're offline there, the track seems to kind of want to throw you off course. You compress nicely if you stay on the racing line next to the curb, but it's a very fine line, as was with turn 6, the fast left-hander before the corkscrew.
Top-notch curb analysis as ever from Kyle Heyer, our resident curb expert, but you're exactly right. It's such an interesting corner. It's a lot faster than it appears to the naked eye the first time you arrive there, and it's all about positioning the car using that curb, but not too much, as you pointed out, because that really can be quite costly, and it sets you up for another deceptively fast corner up the hill, that left-hander there. Both instances, you are carrying a lot of speed, and it causes you to track out quite a long ways, and you need to in order to carry the requisite speed to be fast. But if you exceed that, even by a little bit, you drop a wheel off, and it gets to be a handful very quickly, especially with the sandy dirt that you have on the outside of the racetrack. You mentioned this is a track that was built in a dry lake bed, and you can see that why. In fact, that's what Laguna Seca means, basically a dry lake bed. So it is one of the unique aspects of this race course, and something that you definitely know you're at Laguna just by looking at it. It has that unique aspect to it.
Running up the hill towards turn number 6 again, and one of those Audi R8 GT3s. Now, if I'm not incorrect, I believe that's Vinny Lima, and yes, it is in the 88. We saw this car have a bit of a spin a couple laps ago when we were watching another competitor. He spun in the background. Not a great day for the 32nd place car, the 88 right now, 32nd overall, behind some of the GT4 traffic on the racetrack, and I can't imagine it'll last too much longer. Vinny will probably charge through them. Checking back in GT4, I just don't want to lose sight of that information, that battle going on. Mia Rose's lead is now 4.5 seconds. Tightest battle at the moment is Lutkus and Anor Cavion. You see Anor in the background here.
This is a position Anor just has not been in much this year, where she's been forced to pass people and charge through the field. She's had dominant runs to pole in every one of our races so far, including this one, but something happened at the start that proved costly. She's able to make her way around Lucas right there and pick up another spot, but still a long way to go to try and fully recover from the issues at the start of this race.
GT4 battle still happening with Anor driving up through it. Out front in GT3 though, right behind that, you can actually find your GT3 race leader Brian Heitkotter for Chris Forsberg Racing, Asus ROG on the back of that car. And heading up the hill towards the corkscrew. The sun is also setting here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. Now, every time that we enter in the sim in a dusk or dawn setting, the sunlight kind of washing out your vision, especially if your windshield gets dirty. That can be a legitimate visibility issue, especially with this many cars on this small of a racetrack. I could see that being a problem by the end of this race as we near the halfway point.
It's one of those things that it is realistic in the way that they depict it, but sometimes you wonder, I'm not racing in a real car in the real world. Do I have to put up with some of the inconveniences of it? And in the old days you didn't, but here in this modern era of sims, you absolutely do. And I suppose it's more immersive, but it is pretty distracting. It's not a great experience. But if you're looking for the full experience, and that's what ACC is all about, then this is the place for you, because even something like what the sun looks like coming through the windshield of a GT3 or GT4 car is modeled with great attention to detail.
And looking around the racetrack, you mentioned the attention to detail. For whatever reason, WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca in Assetto Corsa Competizione picks up a lot of marbles at the edge of the racetrack. And when we go to a lot of the European racetracks or the Asian racetracks, they have a lot of asphalt runoff, where if you get into those marbles and you run over those bits of rubber and you slide off the track, think of a place like Paul Ricard, for example, you slide off the track there, there's plenty of pavement to catch you. Here, it's just basically sand trap everywhere. It can be really distracting. See on the right-hand side of the screen there, all those marbles. If you run offline, you're going to slide off the racetrack, and you're just going to keep going until you hit something. That's one of the things people love about Laguna Seca because it really punishes mistakes and really rewards excellence, but it's also one of the things that that people, especially at the grassroots level, dislike about Laguna Seca. It's an expensive day if you go offline.
Yes, that's true, and I think in pro racing that's what you want. You want to have real consequences, and it makes it rewards those that are brave and have the skill to pull it off. Certainly at the grassroots level it's a different equation, but I think that's one of the reasons why this track is so revered by pro racers around the world. I know the Intercontinental GT Challenge came to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca for the first time, speaking to some of the factory drivers from Audi and Mercedes and Bentley, drivers that hadn't raced a whole lot in the U.S. beforehand. They were so excited to get a chance to take a crack at one of the more famous tracks in the world, and I think part of the reason is what you were talking about right there.
Just about 31 minutes remaining on the Rebellion clock at the top of the screen. And as we get to the halfway point, I'd like to remind you to check out the GT World Challenge America social media channels via Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as the YouTube and Twitch chats. Or the Facebook chat, all the places. Make sure that you check out the giveaways from Asus Tough Gaming as well as Fanatec. We'll be giving away 2 sim rigs with custom Asus Tough Gaming 3080 GPUs and AMD CPUs. And speaking from experience, that's about the only place you can get one of those 3080s right now, so you should enter that competition if you want to have a chance at getting one of those giveaways. So with 30 minutes remaining in this race, we're halfway through our 4th round of the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. And it's been a kind of a wild one so far. Things have sort of calmed down for now, but is it the calm before the storm at the end of this race?
Boy, you never know, and you don't want to write anything off at this point. We've seen some fireworks down to the very end of these races throughout the course of the season, haven't we? So I would not be surprised if that were to be the case. The lead has hovered for Heitkotter right around 4 seconds. I think the other one to keep an eye on, though, is the charge from Honor Cavillon. I think she still has a chance to get on the podium before it's all said and done, which is pretty remarkable given how far back she was earlier. She was able to get past Lucas just a little bit ago, now trailing by about 10 seconds over Juan Reynoso. That's a lot of work to do to get up there, but if she can get to Juan, Kostovich is only a further 1.7 seconds up the road. And so with half the race to go and her pace, I wouldn't count her out by any means. I think this is a charge that's going to be worth keeping an eye on here in the final half hour.
Up to 5th place and lots of pace in this car. Cavillon's last lap was a 1:30. Ooh, actually a mistake by Cavillon. The last lap around was a 1:35.9. That's about 4 seconds off pace from the rest of the field. So a potential problem there. But Honor's best lap is a 1:30.333, which is the best of anyone in the GT4 field. So the pace is there. Maybe the consistency and the luck has not been today, but still a lot of racing left to go.
And some of the consistency, I suspect, can be written off to GT3 traffic coming through. That's going to put you in a compromised position from time to time, especially if it's drivers that are a bit inexperienced in multi-class racing to know when to make the pass of the GT4 cars, especially a very fast GT4 car. So, you know, there's that equation of even one of the slower GT3 drivers is going to be faster than the fastest GT4 driver, but how much faster and where becomes the equation. There's a very good chance that a good GT4 driver can run through the corners with one of the slower GT3 drivers, so that makes the mixed class racing aspect all the more complicated.
Certainly does. So Cavillon continues her climb forward in 5th place in class. Move back into GT3 racing and just check in on our race leader, Brian Heitkotter. Last time by was a couple seconds off pace. Again, as you mentioned, still working through plenty of traffic. Nick McMillan was able to have the race lead, though. It's now down to just 2.5 seconds. You see McMillan climb over the corkscrew and rocket down the hill. Lucas Muller in 3rd, a little ways back from this, and Cody Blanton and Dirk Grunwald rounding out the top 5. Not a lot of shuffling here in positions or time, but a battle that is hot right now is Josh Staffen and Michael Kondachulu, who's now cracked the top 10 and looking for 9th in that Lexus.
It's been a great drive back from Kondachulu, trying to get past that Lexus of Staff, and Kondachulu takes a peek to the inside. I think he's going to be able to get it done here. It's hard, well, to run side by side through the corkscrew. Yes, he does get it done. We talked in the open about it being a tough place to pass. Now, that was a little bit off track, Kyle. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that was a fairly sizable cut. Look at Staffen sliding the Lexus through turn number 9. That was a pretty big cut. You get a couple of those, and then you'll get yourself in trouble. But especially during a pass, that would probably alert the steward. So Candecciolo's got to be real careful not to do that again, or it could attract a lot of attention. I believe in the real world, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but I don't they use electronic sensors now to determine if cars are cutting that course, or is that just that circuit of the Americas?
I know that's done at other circuits. I can't say specifically if that's done here. I don't remember back in the IGTC races that I covered at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. So sorry, I'm leaving you hanging there. I don't have the answer for you this time.
Yeah, I was fairly certain that there are sort of anti-cut, at least now in the real world. I'm not sure how recent they are, but I'm fairly certain they've got electronics in some anti-cut curbs that if you run over them, it will report the vehicle that did it back and kind of tell on you. First car stopped in the background, didn't catch who that was. But yeah, basically you don't want to get yourself in trouble by cutting the circuit at any point. So Candecciolo's got to be pretty careful about that.
I did get confirmation, by the way, from our Robbie Montanola that, in fact, no, there was no electronics there,
Gotcha.
at least when IGTC was there, going back a couple of years, because the U.S. round of that championship has subsequently moved to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, with the first Indianapolis 8-hour held earlier this year.
Some confirmation that is not the case. That'd be really cool, though. I mean, that's futuristic. I'm sure the drivers are glad that doesn't
exist. There's no doubt. Well, yeah, there is that, because that takes away any chance to argue with the stewards or deny it, anything like that. I do think it's on its way, and there's some things that can be done with GPS sensors and things like that. I suspect our friends at AWS might have something up their sleeve as well, but that at least for now is in the future, but probably the near-term future, not the long-term future.
Checking back in on our front runners, Heitkotter has actually lost some more time. Nick McMillan only about 15 car lengths back now, within 2 seconds of the race leader, diving into the corkscrew, making up a lot of time. See the M4 GT4 behind, bail out of the way. And McMillan is coming with a head of steam. Last time by was a 1:23.259 to a 1:23.856, so a half a second better for the second place car. With 25 minutes to go, if he can keep that rolling, he'd take the lead and then some.
Yeah, that's really interesting, but that's only if he can find a way past Brian Heitkotter. We talked about it earlier. He is as stout in defense as anybody in sim racing that I have seen. And I think some of that goes just with all the experience that he's built, but also the real-world experience, driving this track in real life as well, knowing how to position the car in such a way it's difficult to make a pass. I would not bet on McMillan finding a way by if I was forced to make a wager here, although the one exception to this might be lap traffic, out-of-class traffic. That could provide the opportunity that might not be there otherwise.
Well, the car in front of him right now is a teammate in Chris Forsberg at Chris Forsberg Racing. And also, keep in mind that both these front runners are GT Academy winners, duking it out at the front of the field here, Ryan. So they've both got a similar experience. And I think they probably learned some of the same tricks over the course of the year, so I'm not sure we're done just yet, although Heitkotter, I think a lot of the pace drop-off has been dealing with traffic as he gets a break there from his teammate. Nick McMillan, though, going to keep the pressure on and see if he can close back in.
Yeah, that's really interesting. A great point as well. Similar backgrounds from the sim racing world to help propel both of these guys, and boy, he is on his way. McMillan at this point has really done a nice job to build a gap over Muller. I thought Lucas might be able to put some pressure on. We also thought Blanton might be able to close in a little bit, but it looks like over the long run, and maybe this comes down to setup a little bit, that the Mercedes of McMillan is really set up for the long haul, maybe less tire deck than some of his competition, and at the moment appears to be one of the fastest cars on the racetrack.
Another gain, about a 10.5 that time through, so we'll keep our eyes there. Meanwhile, Cody Blanton about a second back from Lucas Muller in the 55, so let's keep our eyes on the third place fight as well, especially with some traffic to deal with here. This is a tricky place to get it done. A lot of these corners in this infield section are extraordinarily flat, Ryan, and that creates a lot of stress on these Pirelli tires to kind of scrape along the surface. Not a lot of banking to help the car out. Now middle 3 wide as Muller slots through Forsberg, and I believe, is that Cavillon that they just went through? Might be, as Muller accelerates towards turn 6.
Muller is going to be feeling some pressure right here, I think, before too long. Blanton running some strong lap times. Grunfeld dropped back a little bit in the 5th place, but this is the battle here. Muller and Blanton running in the Muller right now in the final podium spot. Blanton trying to take it. There is that little extra prestige with 3rd rather than 4th. I think it matters a bit more than even second to third, right? If you can get up on that podium, it sure beats standing there and watching your competitors drink the champagne.
So 22 minutes remaining here in this race. At 7:30 p.m. local time here in the simulator. The sun continues to set. The track also might cool off. We're at 21 degrees Celsius right now on the track surface, which matches the ambient temperature. So as the track cools, we're going to see lap times get quicker, especially as the fuel burns off. And what if the lap times do continue to drop or go higher, I should say, then it's probably more tire wear than anything. But the track might speed up in terms of overall grip level through the middles of the corners, and that could change how some of these cars handle. See McMillan get by some more traffic. Checking on a Kadachiolu up to 8th place, just trying to reduce the burn here at the end of the day and see if he can maintain as many points as he can. But with the 44 having issues, I'm not sure it's a huge concern.
No, I agree. This could have been a lot worse. Right now, he is actually in a position, I believe, to extend that points lead, despite it not being a great day, given how it's gone for the 44, and there's more positions to gain up the road. I find it interesting that we have just up ahead the Porsche of Nelson Mason, who qualified on the outside of the front row, was caught out in that fracas a little bit earlier in the race. That was maybe the high watermark for drama in the race to this point, and has done a pretty good job to recover, and actually has a pretty big gap to Kadachiolu. So Michael, at this point,
trouble.
Oh boy, I just put the jinx on Mason, didn't I?
Yep, and off the, well, still resetting back to the pit lane, and Mason's out of the race. I mean, we were just talking about how good of a race he was having. I mean, well, maybe other than the issue at the start, but now resets to the pits. Damage on that car potentially pulling it off the course, and we'll jump back up to the front as, wow, I mean, that's about as dramatic as it can get.
Yeah, that's a real shame. He was having a good recovery. He had a great race going until that issue that started with the contact between Samard and a GT4 car, and then ended up affecting several others.
Oh, right in front of the leader.
Really
right in front of the leader. Trouble, contact. The M4 gets in front of Highcutter, and through goes McMillan to the race lead.
Unbelievable. That's mixed class racing rearing its ugly head. That's the ugly side of combining the two classes. Man, nothing Highcutter could have done differently either. That track was totally blocked. He was left with nowhere to go.
Oh man, that's gonna hurt. He lost a whole bunch of time. Now look at Lucas Muller right in front of him again. Trouble with another one of those GT4 cars, still trying to figure out how to get around him. Blue flags waving everywhere. Highcutter wants second place back, but losing drastic amounts of time to Nick McMillan, who's driving away at the front of the field. So Highcutter had a comfortable lead a lap ago. Now he's fighting to just get back to second.
It can change that quickly, and like I said, I'm not sure anyone was going to pass Brian on just outright pace, but when you throw in lap traffic into the equation, my goodness, everything can change, and it can change so quickly. Highcutter, I don't think actually had the pace of McMillan, but having the lead, I thought, gave him the advantage. Let's see if he can find a way past Muller, though, and get back up into second place. That would at least put a little bit of a salve on the wound of losing out on the race lead.
Well, it's a 4.5 second gap now. Even if he does get by Lucas Muller, to be able to run down McMillan again, I don't know if that's possible. So with 20 minutes to go, major dramas in GT3 for the driver that has led since the drop of the green flag. And think back to last season in GT Rivals back in April. Highcutter had led the entire race, and there was a big crash in front of him on the final lap that he was able to get through. So a similar scenario today, he was not able to get through it, and he remains in third place right now.
It's a good summary of his experience. So, you know, he's been in this a few times. He knows that this is part of the game. And
the leader.
I don't think it's going to affect him. Boy, oh boy, that was close though for McMillan. So, you know, that's the good thing. If you're Brian Highcutter, you're thinking, hey, if it happens to me, it can happen to him too. Just not a ton of time left. We'll have to wait and see. But Lucas Muller right now able to build a little bit of a gap, has a bit more of a push in over Highcutter than he did one lap ago.
The sun is setting. The intensity is rising right now. Lucas Muller, Highcutter, and Cody Blanton all on top of each other. Second, third, and fourth. I think we might see some more shuffling in these positions, but Nick McMillan also out of control. Had to go the long way around one of the FCP Euro Mercedes. That is the 72, what is driven by Nate Vincent today, and through goes the 55 of Muller now. Well, as Highcutter, he's going to get tangled with him. Nate Vincent goes for a slide, and it's definitely getting frisky out there. Elbows are out, and they're starting to throw punches.
Yeah, that's a shame. I didn't get a good look at that, unfortunately. I was trying to make a note of something, and so I didn't really see what happened until the very end of it, but that's not what Brian needed, and perhaps a little bit of frustration on his end. In fact, he lost another spot as a consequence. Look at that, though. I think there's a penalty assessed to Lucas Muller there. 15-second penalty that will be assessed post-race. So I don't remember what that would have been for. Any thoughts from you?
Not that I can think of, unless he had triggered an accident. Oh, I know, pushing the GT4 car off track here a couple laps ago. When all that was going on, there was a white Maserati that got thrown off course due to the 55 kind of sailing up the inside. So that's what's penalized the 55 car. That would put Cody Blanton into second place effectively. Height Cotter back onto the podium. So this is going to shake up everything. I'm not sure how many races have we had this season. Of the 4 or of the 3 that we've completed plus the Spa 6 hours, have we seen drivers finish the race with penalties? I'm thinking Tom O'Gorman back at Bathurst a couple weeks ago. At Monza we had a whole bunch of them. I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of drivers carrying aggressive driving or track limits penalties into the post-race.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's part of racing these days, not just in sim racing, but in the real world. We see this from time to time. But that's a shame for Lucas Muller, because this is another one. We talked about Simard earlier, who has been fast all season long, just has not had the complete race to this point. Simard back in 11th at the moment, and might have a shot to get back up into the top 10. Our pole sitter, it's worth keeping in mind earlier in this race. Well, Lucas Muller, very similar, at least this Lucas Muller, has had a couple good runs, but the consistency hasn't been there. Too many times we've had penalties or collisions with other cars, not always of his making, and that's been an issue, unfortunately, kept him out of the championship fight.
So 3.2 seconds between Muller and McMillan. McMillan out front safely right now. I'm not sure if you're safe anywhere on the racetrack at the moment. Dirk Grunewald and Troy Barman. We saw Barman go for a loop earlier. He's working his way back into a top 5 position. Grunewald would like to hang on to it in that M6 Corteco machine right in front. Josh Staffen in 8th, Chris Bruno, Nelson Mason. Actually, Mason's off track, sorry. Bruno, then Colin Johnson, 9th and 10th. In a couple of the CMS cars. Very nice liveries on these machines. We've talked about it a couple times this season, Ryan, but painted very nicely. With FCP Euro on the side of that. Again, presenting sponsor for the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. And running a variety of different cars in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, as well as the Bentley that you're seeing behind the Continental GT.
That's pretty interesting. Unfortunately, it sounds like the Bentley program in GT World Challenge America is unlikely to materialize for next year. We only saw them in one race with K-Pax Racing last year, but the Lamborghini on the other side of things, I have some intel that leads me to believe they are going to be very well represented come 2021, which is really exciting, a new element to the championship. We really haven't had a ton of Lamborghini involvement in the last couple of years. Can't say too much about what I expect to happen in 2021, but I will say if some of the dots that I've been connecting here over the last couple of weeks all lead to the right place, then there's a lot to be excited about. Just the driver lineups, the teams, and things of that nature. Pretty exciting stuff, and it's always great to have Lamborghini represented, a great brand manufacturer with a ton of commitment to GT racing as of late, and also one of the manufacturers involved in the global GT World Challenge competition for manufacturers that spans the globe in all 4 of the GT World Challenge championships: Europe, Asia, America, and now Australia.
Chris Bruno representing driving one of those Lamborghini Huracans today. Good looking cars too, very Batman-esque, I think, heading down into the corkscrew. Batmobile-ish, if that's an adjective I can use. Dirk Grunewald and Troy Barman continue to scrap for 5th place. Let's move back to the GT4 field just for a moment, bring some updates there. It's still Mia Rose leading that category in the Jean Alesi Esports Academy Porsche 718. It's 12 seconds back to find Joseph Kostovich in the Aston Martin. That is a great looking car heading up towards turn number 6. Then Takis Weeks in the 626. Juan Reynoso and Honor Cavillon is right there as well. So Cavillon might be able to grab a couple spots here, Ryan.
Yeah, that's it exactly. This is the battle for 3rd, and Honor was something like 17 seconds back the last time we checked in on her. Right now, making a move to the inside to pick up 4th foot contact.
And hits the tire barriers at the exit at turn number 6. and about to go for a podium spot, and all that progress gets erased in just a moment. Got a little bit too wide, had contact with Reynoso in that Maserati, and the 56 car went for a loop.
Well, the good news, as long as that car is drivable, Enor should be able to salvage a 5th place finish because she had a big gap over Lucas in 6th. But man, you could tell the podium was in sight and she saw the opportunity. It looked to me like Reynoso slipped up just a little bit and opened the door to the inside, and Enor just tried to pounce and get that car with an aggressive move to the inside to try and grab 4th and then put some pressure on Weeks for 3rd, and it just didn't quite go right. They ran out of room, a little bit of contact there side to side, and we were in car, so I didn't get a great look at exactly what happened, but Enor definitely got the worst end of it.
There's the 96 car of Michael Kondakcioglu right behind, up to 7th place. So the points leaders have had some struggles today, but both have rebounded. Even with Enor Cavillon's recent incident, I don't think it's going to make a huge impact on the point situation. So both of them will get away with it, I think. But we'll keep our eyes on this battle through the rest of the day. We've got 11 minutes remaining in this race. And getting down to the tail end of this. And now the focus shifts back to GT3. Cody Blanton and Brian Heitkotter running 0.8 of a second apart. And Grunveld and Barman in the background for 5th, only running a couple car lengths apart as well.
Yeah, really good battle here in the top 5, and keep in mind, all of this also affected by that 15-second post-race penalty on Lucas Muller. So as long as you can get within that 15 seconds, you'll get that spot post-race, and I think everyone in this group is thinking about that at the moment, but maybe not too hard because Dirk's got his hands full. Barman is on the charge.
So with 10 minutes remaining, make sure that you check out the GT World Challenge America Esports, I shouldn't say esports, the GT World Challenge America social networks, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, as well as in the various live stream chats to enter to win one of 2 Fanatec and Asus Tough Gaming powered sim rigs with 3080 GPUs and AMD CPUs and lots of and XYZs and all the letters and acronyms for all the things. All I can tell you is that there's some really good computers and sim racing setups provided by Fanatec that will be available for you to attempt to win if you join them on the social media network. So check that out. Make sure you get your entry in to win one of those 2 PCs. 10 minutes remaining. Grunveld and Barman up the hill towards the corkscrew. Sun is setting. Trouble ahead of them. There's a car off track to the inside. I think that's a 222. And well, Barman continues his pursuit here, Ryan.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's a beautiful shot here with that sunset. I love how the clouds are modeled as well, the sky changing colors. Just so beautiful, so perfect, modeled here in ACC. Grunfeld taking the defensive line to the inside, has that GT4 Porsche there as a bit of a pick, so even though Grunfeld took the compromised entry into the corner, Barman really couldn't take advantage of it. He couldn't track out the way he wanted to with the GT4 car occupying that spot. Here's a look back. Grunfeld now into the Andretti hairpin. Barman closing in under braking, just trying to find a weakness, poking and prodding, trying to find a way past, but it's hard to do around this place.
Still some battles happening. Headlights coming on now, and that might help visibility for some drivers to for the GT4 field to look in their mirrors and be able to see the GT3 cars coming. They come with a whole head of steam here. Back in 9th place, there's Colin Johnson. Chris Bruno, Philippe Simard all kind of having a bit of a scrap. We'll keep our eyes on this. I think Simard might have a look here at Bruno for 10th into turn 1.
Well, it's been a tough day, to say the least, for Simard. Great run in qualifying, as has been the case, it seems like, every single week we do this. Did not get a great start, lost the lead to Brian Heitkotter, and was running right there in contention, but ultimately some contact with the GT4 car and subsequent contact upon rejoining the racetrack caused loss of time, first of all, and then a penalty. So Simard has been on the back foot ever since. Has a top 10 in sight, but has that Lamborghini up ahead, the Raging Bull, to try and find a way past. And it's not going to be an easy thing, even with the pace of this Ferrari. I suspect it's not at its optimal condition either, given some of the harrowing experiences it has had through nearly an hour's worth of racing at this point, but still a lot of pace in the car. Simard's done a good job to try and get some kind of result out of this difficult day, and we'll regroup going to Imola next week with a chance hopefully to come out on top for the first time. Certainly the pace has been there to win races this year, Kyle, but Simard hasn't been able to put it all together.
And quick hands in turn 4 about a half a lap ago really caught the car. It had a big moment through the middle sector of the racetrack. Was able to hang on to it. But again, you mentioned Felice Simard not being able to put it all together. And now just trying to put something together to get a top 10 away from Chris Bruno. We'll have a look here to driver's left. Bruno slams the door shut, almost runs him into the concrete. Now down to the Andretti hairpin. Door is open. We'll see if he drives down in there and takes it. He's going to send it in that Ferrari GT3. He's through, going to run him a little wide, but Simard is through to 10th.
Yeah, that was Simard making sure that that pass was completed. You talked earlier about maybe sometimes you could hang out there on the outside and make it work because you've got a couple of turns to the right to follow, but Simard, I think, just opened that wheel up a little bit, forced the Lamborghini into a spot on the racetrack he didn't really want to be in, and that made sure that that pass was completed there. Now a little bit of lap traffic to use as a pick as well, and Simard is off and running, trying to chase down the Bentley of Johnson just up ahead.
Michael Herzen in the FCP Euro Mercedes AMG running 15th. Have been a pretty solid day for Michael this afternoon. Running top 15, has a 15-second penalty, however, that will be applied post-race. That will bring Sally McNulty an opportunity to run top 15 if she can run up there and catch Santiago, who's a little ways up the road. Look at the sunset there. But Sally McNulty has also had a pretty calm day. We haven't really seen this car be in the middle of any chaos, and it looks like it's got all the body panels still on it, which is a plus, and certainly not the standard today. We've seen a lot of incidents.
Yeah, that seemed a little bit strange, though. Looks like Sally's off the pace a little bit. Pulled over to the inside and just tucked up in line. Maybe those are some of the leaders coming through, and I think that is the case. So that's a heads-up drive right there by Sally as she watches this battle between Barman and Grunfeld roar past her. But Sally's not a driver, again, with a lot of door-to-door racing experience. First year was in 2019, and actually in that transition from time attack racing to actual door-to-door racing, went and got her license through the Skip Barber School, which is the official driving school partnership of SRO America. They've been at it for a long time, but a great partner for the series now the last couple of years, and a great avenue for a licensing perspective. You can go, you can get some coaching, you can get some experience in the car, and you leave your program with a license that has you ready to race in TC America, and that's true for anybody who's listening to this. So if it's something that you've got some interest in, that is a program that's out there, and it's a way to get off the couch and get into a race car if you have the means and the motivation to try and do so.
Oh, right in front of them, there's some trouble in front of our 5th and 6th place battle. Cars going a little wide off into the gravel. There's that white Maserati that I didn't catch the number on it. Here comes Barman, though. Will take that opportunity to go a long way around in turn number 5. Door-to-door, trading paint as they head up the hill towards turn number 6. And Grunfeld tries to hang on. He will. Barman's attempt failed there, but that was a pretty strong attempt.
It was. That is a tough place to get it done. I think it's a little bit off camber out there. Not a great place to be hanging out. Plenty of marbles to be sure at this point in the race as well. And he almost made it work. And give Grunfeld credit also. He was super clean. He knew exactly how much room he could give, and he was able to do so. That's why we had such clean racing right there. Those two respecting each other, giving just enough room. It was a spirited defense, but a clean defense, which is what we want to see.
Not over yet. Neither is the battle for the race lead. Now remember that Lucas Muller has a time penalty that will be applied at the end of the race of 15 seconds, but he has closed in on Nick McMillan and close that gap to 8.5 tenths of a second. It's not really going to do him any good to get the race lead away, but it will put another car between you and other competitors, and while I think it's going to be sort of all for naught, think about what could have been if that penalty wasn't applied. He could be battling for the race win. So every time that you think about putting your car in a situation that could get you a penalty, this is why you got to think twice, because if he didn't have a penalty, he would have a chance to win this race.
Yeah, that's a real shame. Lucas Muller has been fast. The Haupt racing team, we've talked about this story a few times, but Hubert Haupt, a racing driver with a big connection to Mercedes over the years, has stepped kind of into a team management side of things and has taken over the racing operations from Black Falcon, and now the team runs as Haupt Racing Team. But they are so involved on the esports side of things, which is awesome. The esports drivers do a lot of work with the actual drivers for the Haupt Racing Team that compete in SRO championships in Europe, the NLS, among other European championships. And yeah, to your point though, it's been a good race for Lucas, but that penalty is going to be very, very costly. I'd be pretty careful here about trying to make a pass of the leader when you know it's not actually for position, but everyone's going to have to be careful. Look at this traffic, Kyle.
3 wide through turn number 2, the Andretti hairpin. It is a traffic jam, but both McMillan and Muller both get through. And that gap remains at about 0.7 of a second. It's going to close in a little bit this sector. But 2 minutes to go. We should be closing in on the white flag lap potentially next time around, but the traffic is very, very busy. McMillan's going to juke to the left. The car that could actually threaten Blanton for the lead. Oh, Muller's in hot, almost drills the back of the race leader. That was really tight. You mentioned being careful. There was not a whole lot of careful there.
No, there was not. That was too close for comfort. The last thing you want to do when you're carrying a penalty like this is affect somebody else's race. And we came very close to seeing that happen, but all credit to Lucas. He was able to get it wound up. At least that time. It's close again here in the corkscrew. And you know what? If you're McMillan, you got to know that Muller has this penalty. It might not be a bad idea just to let that Mercedes on by. There is no way he's going to pull out a gap that is big enough where, you know, he won't be ahead by over 15 seconds is what I'm trying to say with basically a lap to go.
Well, coming out of turn number 11, we'll have under 1 minute and 20 seconds remaining. That means that at the start-finish line, we'll have the white flag displayed. Should be the last time around WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. It is. One more time around, 2.25 miles left in round 4 of the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. McMillan leads. The car behind him ineligible to win this race unless he gets somehow 15 seconds ahead of the race leader, which is unlikely, but not impossible, I guess.
I suppose it could happen, but that would require several cars to have problems here in the final lap. Great to see McMillan having this kind of a race, though, I have to say. And it was a really measured race, which is what we needed on a day like today, when it seems like everybody had a problem at one point or another, and he's just been able to keep his nose clean-ish until maybe right there. Kept it on track, though. Half a lap from victory.
Up the hill from turn number 6, one final time through the corkscrew, one final descent down one of the most famous corners in all of racing. Left and right over the crest, and 3 corners away now from victory in the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Sparks still flying from underneath that Mercedes-AMG GT3, and it has been a wild race here, as it always is in this championship. The race leader, Brian Heitkotter, ended up falling to 4th after some drama up front, but for Nick McMillan, calm, cool, and collected. Final corner, checkered flag waves, and Nick McMillan will win at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, and the sun is setting, and the championship is ramping up for the last round here in a couple weeks at Imola. Lucas Muller second, Cody Blanton in third, but remember that Muller's got a penalty to be applied. We'll see how far he falls. Heitkotter should cycle out to be third, then Grunewald, Barman, Kardashian, Staffen, Johnson, and Simard, the rest of your top 10. Then Bruno, Marlowe, Archer, Burgoon, and Herzen, and then in GT4 as they come across the line here in a moment. The driver that will win this race is Mia Rose in the 956, as long as she can get back to the start-finish line without any dramas. And while it's not a Nor Cavillon from Jean Alesi Esports Academy, it will be a car from that stable that will go to victory lane here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca.
Look at this, Honora's already taken the checkered flag in third. She was behind the overall leader, so didn't get to complete the same number of laps, but she has made her way back up onto the podium despite being hit on that opening lap and dropping way, way back. So a great recovery from the driver that had won every race so far in GT4 until now.
The Cavillon finishes in third unofficially here. Kostovich will be second. Of course, Mia Rose crosses the line, wins at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, picks up a checkered flag. And that is it, the conclusion of our 4th round of the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. But how about Nick McMillan? Through all the chaos and confusion of the middle part of that race, Nick drove out front and then held that lead and didn't make a whole lot of mistakes, Ryan, and that's what it takes to win one of these races with the level of competition that we have.
Well, that's a big one for Nick because it'll be an outside chance, but he will have a chance at the championship at Imola when we get there in 2021 because of this result. 30 points for the race win, came in 8th in points with 34 points. This brings him to 64. Kardashian had 67 entering this. He finishes back in the 7th spot and critically behind Troy Barman, who's the other big winner here. Didn't make up a ton of points, just finishing 1 spot ahead of Kardashian, but Barman entered this race 3rd in points, 11 points behind Condacciolu, picks up a couple, and so that puts him in a position where if Condacciolu struggles for the 3rd consecutive race, then there's a chance to pick up some points and pick up a championship. He did everything he needed to do to leave this race in contention. I would put McMillan in that conversation as well. Heitkotter maybe on the outside of the opportunities to win a championship, given the number of cars in between himself and Condacciolu, but there are several that will have a shot at the title. Condacciolu, though, I still think enters our final round as the championship favorite.
Fastest lap, CrowdStrike fastest lap award, every second counts. Nelson Mason, a 1:23.619, the quickest lap that we saw here this afternoon. And in just a moment, we're going to bring you the full race results to get a rundown on how everything kind of panned out. But as the sun set here, it just got kind of tame towards the end. But the middle part of that race, Ryan, was really where all the action was. Let's have another look at the race results and run them down, Ryan. From the top, McMillan got it done. Then Blanton and Heitkotter will end up on the rest of the podium. Muller drops to 4th with that penalty.
Yeah, that penalty is crucial. That really does hurt Muller. Heitkotter, though, able to get up into 3rd. That is a good result. Looked like he might have had a chance for his first win of the season, but it didn't quite go his way with some other traffic. Look at that. Grunwald does end up holding off Barman and comes home in the 5th spot. That was a hard-fought battle there. Condacciolu, a nice recovery to 7th. Remember, at the start of this race, there was contact, and he ended up behind all of the GT4 cars even. So that really was a remarkable comeback drive for Michael Condacciolu. Staffen, a nice steady run in the Lexus to be 8th. Johnson in the Bentley in 9th. And Simard, the pole sitter, still looking to put that complete race weekend together. We'll have to settle for the 10th spot.
And dropping down for the GT4 field, it was, again, Mia Rose that won in the Porsche 718 came in for John Alesi Esports Academy. We've got Nick McMillan with us now, and I'd like to talk to Nick briefly, and we'll see if we've got Nick. Hey, Nick, you got a copy? It appears that we have Nick. Let's try Mia. See if we've got Mia Rose from our GT4 race winner. Mia Rose, you got a copy? We'll appear to have a copy at the moment. But Ryan, we'll run down the very tail end of this before we talk to our race winners. Again, we're heading to Imola for our final round of the season, which is a track that we have not been to yet in either of the previous rounds of this Esports Championship. Imola is a very different track from WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, but it's a great place to contend a season finale. Very fast, very sweeping. Your thoughts on heading there for a season finale?
Well, I think it's awesome. It's one of my favorite tracks anywhere in the world. It's one of my favorite I've ever been able to get to also, and a great addition, by the way, to Assetto Corsa Competizione, part of the more recent DLC, which is really cool to see. Kuno's continuing to put a lot of effort into keeping the game updated and give us some new content to salivate over as the game continues to improve, seemingly week to week and month to month. It's a great place, great track, an old school venue that has a lot of its old school feel. Unlike so many of the older European circuits, it still has that same daunting nature to it. There are a few places where we're going to be stuck talking about track limits. That can't be avoided, but in a lot of respects, Imola is one of the classic European circuits, a great place for GT racing, and I think it's going to put on a tremendous show. Couldn't be happier that that's going to be the finale for us this year.
We've got Nick McMillan waiting for us now in the post-race booth here. Hey, Nick, you got a copy?
Yeah, I believe I can hear you guys.
All right, I got you. Hey, Nick, congratulations. That was a spectacular race. A lot of chaos and confusion in the middle part of that one, but you ended up winning this one by a couple seconds over the drivers behind you. Some penalties assessed, but a lot of traffic, and that was sort of the big concern today.
Yeah, I knew traffic was going to play a huge part in this. I mean, we've got over 40 cars with GT4, so Laguna Seca is already difficult as a single class race, and so adding those GT4s in there, I knew it was going to be a little bit hectic and chaotic. So really, like, my initial strategy was just to like stay out of trouble, you know, like don't rush anything. Of course, when you're in the heat of the moment, you get a little bit nervous, you make some mistakes, but yeah, it's fun to have raced like that. I didn't want to see Brian or anyone else spin out like that, but yeah, no, I had a lot of fun. It was a really, really good race.
We have one more round remaining in the season. That's at Imola, actually after the new year. A little bit of a different track than Laguna Seca. Might be a little easier for multi-class. Your thoughts on that last race, and do you think you can win there?
You know, at first, you know, coming into this race, I was a little bit hesitant on my pace, but I felt like I was right there. I finally got the car sorted a little bit more, and I'm really looking forward to Imola. This definitely gives me a little boost in confidence. I think, again, I've got that car there, and so, yeah, just get the practice in. Got to learn Imola a little bit more. I know it, but I think it's going to be really fun. I love that track. Always allows for good racing, and so, yeah, going to be a little bit easier, hopefully, on the multi-class, but definitely looking forward to it.
All right, Nick, thanks so much for your time. We're going to move on now
Yeah,
to Mia Rose, who is our GT4 race winner. And Mia, congratulations on winning this race. A hard-fought victory. With all the traffic and everything going around you, it had to feel very chaotic at times, but led from flag to flag, plenty of pace there. Your teammate struggled at the beginning with an incident. Walk us through the first part of the race, that first chaotic lap, and then the rest of the race, managing to hang on and win your first round. Oh, we do not have audio from you, Mia. I think you're muted on your end. There we go.
Sorry, there we go. Yeah, first lap was very chaotic. Cold tyres, usual in GT4. Probably once I got past the BMW out of turn 2, was sort of easy home from there. Basically nearly every car bar the top 5 in GT3 for some reason, in my opinion, didn't leave room, or it was weird because they just it didn't feel like they wanted to do anything in terms of give it room or passes at very smart spots. And there were a few issues with my teammate in GT4. I was with her over the phone as well. Yeah, like, she had a nightmare of a race. I actually do feel sorry for her that she's had a massive nightmare of a race to get third. But yeah, my race was all about survival, really. First time I've done multi-class in ages, so I just had to really, I would say, sort of go back to when I used to do multi-class in iRacing, and basically just was crossing fingers with traffic and crossing fingers that I didn't put myself through a mistake or put myself in the wall like I nearly did a couple times during that race. But other than that, it was just keep the car on the black stuff and get home. That was it. So.
Well, congratulations, a really well-earned victory. Hopefully we'll see you again at Imola to round out the rest of the season. Your thoughts on Imola and how that will race differently from Laguna Seca, and do you think you can repeat your victory?
Imola, in terms of a multi-class style track, is way better. Like, it is probably a universe better than Laguna Seca is. I think it'll be a lot more easier in terms of cars passing others. Possibly the first turns 1 to 5 are probably going to be really hard to pass, but other than that, it should be a nice, easy circuit to pass cars, especially with traffic. I don't know if I can repeat my win. I think Anor will probably come back into Imola with a very fast car. Hopefully she doesn't get screwed by traffic and other cars again like this round. But yeah, basically I'll just go into Imola, just sort of seeing what happens like this one. So.
Well, again, congratulations on your victory. Good luck to you at Imola, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for your time. Move on now back to Ryan Marine to close out the day here. Ryan, a pretty entertaining event for all things considered. Lots of drama, though, at the beginning and the middle of this race. All cycles out with Nick McMillan picking up a victory, as well as Mia Rose. Your final thoughts here on WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca before we move on to Imola?
I'll tell you what, there was nothing dull about what we had for us here today. Credit to all of the competitors. I thought we had a lot of really close and clean racing. A few instances of contact and some drama, but hey, we need that to keep us entertained, so no complaints there. Thought it was a perfect setting, a wonderful track, and great to have North America represented within Assetto Corsa Competizione. And looking forward to seeing what the championship has in store for us when we wrap things up at Imola. I think GT3 is anyone's game, and I would not bet against Anor Cavillon bouncing back and getting a win in GT4. That's just my 2 cents, though.
Absolutely. Ryan, thanks for your time. Our next event will be after the new year. Make sure that you comment below to tell us what you'd like to see in another season here of the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks again to all our partners as well as FCP Euro for sponsoring this series. And we'll see you next time on the other side of the new year in 2021 at Imola in Italy to round out our FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. My name's Kyle High with Ryan Marine. We'll see you next year for the conclusion of the series.
Welcome to FCP Euro. Here we are in the Motorsport Garage. This is where we house our two Volkswagen GTI TCRs, as well as our C300 Endurance Racer right behind me. Now what's special about this space is this is actually part of our headquarters. So right to the right, we have our retail center where enthusiasts come in every day to come pick up the parts they need to repair their European car. And what's even better is right behind us is our distribution center. This is where thousands of packages are picked, packed, and shipped every single day to enthusiasts like you around the world. Now, this year has been a little different for us. Due to COVID, we've stayed safe and we've stayed here and we haven't participated in events. That said, we have tried to participate from afar, either digitally or dipping our toes into e-racing and other things like that. Now, next year, we cannot wait to get back out into events and meet all of you in person. So if you just want to browse parts for your European car or you want to learn more about our motorsports team, please head over to fcpeuro.com.